and welcome back to another movie of the week. And the movie of this week was the Huntsman Winter War from 2016. So if you haven't watched it, watch it now. If you're new to movie of the week, I don't usually butcher the titles names, but you know, each their own. And in movie of the week, we talk about a movie here. You guys comment below your thoughts. And in 2024, we're doing franchises and reboots and things of those elements. So I did 4 different Snow White movies. I did Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, I did Mirror Mirror, and then I did Snow White and the Huntsman, and now this is the last one, the Huntsman Winter War. So if you haven't watched those movies and watched those videos, do that now, and then watch this movie and watch this video, and let's just get into it. Also, I just want to say, in my last video, I think I called this a prequel, because I only have watched this movie once before, and I thought it was a prequel, but it's actually a sequel. It has a lot of flashbacks, so that's why I think I was like confused, because I was like, I know there's some backstory, but it was a sequel. It was a sequel. So if you are here and you didn't watch my other videos, basically I really wanted to do something where I just love the idea of like the same IP, the same story, and different ways you can tell them. And especially like different ways you can tell them depending on where you are in life. So like 1937, this was like the first Disney movie, you know, the animation and like how sexist it was. Like I talked a lot about that. And then Mirror Mirror was kind of them trying to do like a live action version where there's, you know, she's fighting back and all this stuff, but it's also a comedy. And so they went in that direction. They had a lot of different changes, like the man is the one that's poisoned, and it's actually like Doggy Love that he's poisoned with. So it's interesting they did that approach. And then it's also, they said Mirror Mirror, the movie's called Mirror Mirror, but in the original movie in I think 1937, they don't actually say Mirror Mirror. And the original Grimm story, this is all based off Grimm story, they don't say Mirror Mirror. So it's something that's interesting about how stories are told over time and how there's different versions of the story. And then I did Snow White and the Huntsman, which also came out in 2012. And so I think it's really interesting these 2 movies came out in the same year, and how, you know, Mirror Mirror was PG, Snow White and the Huntsman was PG-13, and how it's a little bit darker, and how someone wanted to take a version of the story where it's the huntsman, and there's, you know, there's something where like the huntsman has a story with it too. And so that's what happened. And I think this is actually based off a book, because I think I saw it in the credits when I watched this movie, the Huntsman Winter War. That was more backstory about the queen, but it was actually about her sister queen, which like I really forgot a lot about this movie. And so I think it's something where there's just like people, not just with the story of Snow White, they come up with, you know, they focus on other characters like the huntsman, like I said, but then they also try to give like backstory to different things. So they gave some backstory obviously to the queen, but then they added this thing with her sister, and they came up with this story that is connected to Snow White. So it's something where I was thinking about it, like you could have had this story and not have it be connected to Snow White. You just change a little bit details here and there, like there's no Snow White. Like it could have just been like, you know, these 2 sisters who have powers, I guess, and this awful thing happens to this one sister, so then she does these things with all the kids, and you know, the same beginning kind of happens, and the there's this object that they have to retrieve, which is what the story is, and then they come back, and then maybe the original sister never died, but she was in hiding. You know, you could have had the same story, but it was a story inspired by Snow White, and I think there's an emphasis there that it was inspired by Snow White. It stemmed off from Snow White, but I think this is the most different than the other Snow White movies, because it's not focused on Snow White. Like I talked about in the last movie, that, you know, Snow White is still the main character. Snow White's still the main character, but the huntsman is like the second mainest character, and this is the first time we see, you know, another character have so much. But also I think I talked about how, you know, we would have loved to see from the perspective of a villain, like what if we were going to focus on another character, why didn't we focus on the queen? Why didn't we focus on the villain? And so this one actually kind of got into, you know, the thing about the villain, like, you know, because this thing happened to the sister, that's why she's this way. But then she's like not as evil as her sister, the queen that we saw in the other movie. I don't know their names, so we're just gonna go. This might be confusing, but just follow along, I guess. But then in the end, she kind of like fought back with her sister and was just caring about, you know, those kids, those huntsmen that technically she kind of raised. So but it's something where we still we didn't see really perspective of like the real villain. And so that's something I still want and like with the regular Snow White story, so I do. But I mean, like, amazing cast. And I saw a lot of comments on Letterboxd that's like, this movie is trash, but it has amazing cast. I feel like this movie is actually like really interesting. Like, I, you know, couldn't remember a lot of things my first time watching, but I felt like it was very intriguing and interesting. And again, like, you could have had this as just a regular story and not have it be connected to Snow White. I like forgot that she didn't actually die. Like, it just like things like that, that it's like, but you know, they added this whole like more romance. Like, this had more romance. You know, you would think that the Snow White story would have more romance, but this had more romance. And you know, they added in sex, they added, you know, stuff to try to compel people to watch. Like, of course, I feel like, you know, the world would have kept spinning if this one didn't come, but I think what's just so interesting, and I think I keep saying it, is the idea of like looking at these stories and how they are told and how they're different. And that's why I really wanted to include Snow White and the Huntsman and then this movie as well when we're doing this for Movie of the Week, because it's interesting, you know, not just, you know, sequels, or actually technically it is a sequel, but you know, not just like reboots, I guess, in a way, but just kind of seeing how they then take the story a little bit different. And it's inspired by the same thing. And I just think this is overall very intriguing. So that's it for Snow White, these cool movies. You know, comment below your thoughts about Snow White. And then we're gonna do a few different, this is also kind of similar, where it's like kind of a similar idea and then how they use it in different ways. But you know, there's a lot of movies that deal with the day repeating, like the day constantly repeating. And I actually, if you don't remember me, I had a film, well, I wrote a script for a feature film that had the day repeat. It's called Yom Kippur, and so it's like this teenage boy stuck reliving Yom Kippur over and over, like the same day. And I then also made I tried to make it into a short and filmed that as my thesis in college. So I've always been like really, like, I really love like alternate universes, like that idea, but I always also really like this idea. So we're gonna do a few different movies that have this idea. Obviously, we're gonna start off with Groundhog Day, 1993, which I think this is like the first movie with the concept, and that's why people talk about it like Groundhog Day, and like that's kind of how I reference it, but I don't know exactly if it actually is. So, you know, comment below your thoughts about Snow White, below all Snow White, any other movies that have to do with Snow White that maybe I should have done, or just like your perspective of those movies and how that changes and everything. And then watch Groundhog Day from 1993 for next week. Thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and bye.